Today we're drawing fish. Lots of fish. Lots and lots of it. Well, hello there, I'm Détroit. Fish. What an interesting concept. A water-dwelling creature that comes in a variety of sizes, colors and shapes. It's gonna be a long video, but it's definitely worth it. Let's draw some fish in Procreate, and by some I mean a very large amount. In fact, today we're drawing 126 fish. There are also 2 whales, a starfish, 2 manta rays, a calamar and an octopus. There is also 1 bird, because why not? See if you can spot it. So in total, 134 creatures in this drawing. Not counting the fish I've drawn in preparation for this artwork. Here's a brief insight into my preparation process. On a Photoshop page, I've assembled a bunch of references that I drew over. My goal was to produce a reference document with the style I was going to be using later in Procreate, as well as a few examples of fish designs I could use. By looking frequently at this reference document, I started sketching in Procreate on the iPad Pro. Just so you know, the total time it took me to produce the full artwork is 6 hours, over 4 days. Just the sketching alone was 1 hour and 30 minutes long. To sketch, I'm using the basic pencil brush that comes with Procreate. I think it's called Peppermint. As you can see, there is a trend to this sketch. All the fish tend to go away from the central point, the center of the canvas. To give them a reason to, I decided to add a hook. Now it all makes sense. Except for the bird, of course, he wouldn't care about fishing. Right from the sketch, you can see that a lot of fish are very similar looking. Turns out it's kinda hard to stay original while drawing more than 100 fish. You have the classical fish, that is oblong shaped, then the large flat ones, and the ones that are not really oval. To make them all different, I'm mainly playing with the position of the eye, the number of fins, and the shape of the fins and the tail. Some fish have pointy fins, some have round ones. Also, there are a few recognizable fish in there. The sharks should be obvious. Great white sharks, but also hammerhead sharks. There are lampreys with the glowing thingy on their head too. And there are like 2 or 3 swordfish. All the rest is some variation of random fish bits from my reference document. There are 2 main aspects I want to talk about regarding the sketching phase of this process. The first is about the overall composition. All the fish are oriented outwards, which was kinda hard to draw, especially in the bottom middle. In that area, the fish can't be to the side, but have to partially face us. Drawing a fish that isn't to the side is really hard. It looks a bit janky, but in the overall composition, it's fine. Apart from these 10 or so fish looking towards us, all the others are seen simply from the side. This makes it much easier and it goes well with the cartoony look, which is my second point. Instead of drawing realistic looking fish, I deliberately chose to do them very cartoon-like. It's a style that goes well with this sort of overcrowded artwork. Additionally, it makes drawing much more efficient by simplifying everything. The eyes are all the same, a simple circle with a crescent. All the fish will be looking at the hook in the middle of the picture, which is also a good way for me to remember where the middle is when zoomed in. The mouths are also all identical, with big pouting lips. Add 1 curve for the gills, and the image of a fish is complete. These fish are all very funny to me, and I love them. Now that the sketch is good, it's time to ink. Only I chose a canvas size that was a bit too small for this, and the inking brush, the Baskerville brush that I absolutely love, turned out a bit too pixelated for my taste. So I exported the sketch as a PNG file and opened it into a new, bigger canvas. I didn't look too hard. I doubled the dimensions, giving me a surface that is 4 times bigger than the iPad screen resolution. Quick tip, if you're in the same scenario of having to resize an artwork, do it when you're in the sketching phase. It will give you a more pixelated sketch, but it's okay, since it's just a sketch. If you do it after your inking or your colors, you will have no way to get rid of these messy pixels. So we're quite a bit into the inking now. Inking all these fish took me 1.5 hours, just like the sketch did. This inking is the sole reason I decided to draw this picture in Procreate rather than in Photoshop on my PC. I could have done the same illustration in Photoshop, but the Baskerville brush feels really good. If you don't know, it's a brush that is smooth along its path. The faster you move, the smoother the lines and their thickness will be. In turn, if you move too fast, the curve will tend to be a bit too straight. I'm talking, for example, about the fish mouth. In any case, the inking went smoothly, pun intended. Inking such a piece is very relaxing. It takes a toll on the wrist, but being able to completely turn off your brain and simply follow the lines feels good. Something I forgot to mention about the sketch, and that I did right before the inking, is redraw some of the fish. In the bottom middle especially, they were all a bit small and the drawing was too crowded. For illustrations as big as this one, when you spend a lot of time zoomed in, even for the sketch, it can be tricky to keep the same size throughout, and if you're not careful, it changes along your process. Fortunately, it's something I'm used to, and apart from that area in the middle, it didn't happen too much. I always have to be careful about size changes when I draw abstract doodles with ink. Sometimes I start with a pattern of a certain size, and before long I get too comfortable with it and I stop thinking about the size. And in the end you can clearly see a distinction between where I started and where I ended up. With ink it's important to not do that too much, because you can't erase. Here I can erase, redraw or even resize. Plus, fish can be a variety of sizes, so it's okay. And because they are cartoony, it doesn't matter if a tuna fish is bigger than a whale anyway. You know what? I absolutely love this drawing. A bit later you'll see me color it, but since it really looks like a coloring book page, I decided to make it available as such. So in the description you will see a link to download the picture with only the line art in black and white, so you can color it digitally or print it and color it traditionally. If you do it, please send me your colored version on Instagram or Twitter, I'd be really happy to see it. While the inking is still going on, I'm going to tell you about the inspiration for this artwork. Not for the concept, which is entirely mine, but for the overall art style and the idea of cramping a lot of cartoony things in a relatively small space. I was inspired to do that by watching a 100 Doodle challenge video by Angela Kalokaiurinu on YouTube. So there you go, that's why I got the idea to draw that in that style. Of course, again, due to drawing so many abstract patterns, this cramp style was right up my alley to begin with. I also took a lot of tips from that video. You see, despite having an iPad with Procreate for about a year, there are a lot of things I still don't know about Procreate. A lot of the functionalities are a bit hidden and different from Photoshop. Once you know they exist, they are rather intuitive, but you still have to know them for that. One thing I learned only quite recently, for example, is turning a layer into a reference. If you double tap on a layer, you can see reference in the menu. By activating it, you can set your layer, the line art, or inks in my case, as your reference. Then you can make a new layer and color drop on it, and it will only fill according to your reference layer. If I don't do that and I color drop on a layer without a reference, the entire layer, and so the entire canvas, will be filled with colors. If I color drop on the layer that has the inks, it will fill the right area, but it will be on the same layer, which isn't good. By turning one layer into a reference for the other layers, you can get the best of both worlds. When I learned that, it blew my mind. It's so much better than going to a layer, selecting an area, then switching layers and painting the selection in. So by now, you should have understood that it is what I did to start coloring the picture. I used my inking layer as my reference to color drop. At first, I arbitrarily colored some of the fish on different layers, like 6 or 7 of them. I knew the emphasis was going to be on the center of the canvas, the fish hook, and that the outskirts would be more blended with the background. So on each layer I colored the outer fish, then a bit closer, then closer, etc. until I reached the fish in the middle. To discern the layers better, at first I used bright colors, but then I changed every tone to be a bit more bluish. It's kinda cool looking as it is, but I'm not satisfied with it. I want an explosion of color, so for each layer I added a clipping mask and started dropping new colors everywhere. I used the coloring layer style because I wanted to keep the brightness and saturation mostly as it was. This will serve as a good base for the coloring while keeping the focus in the center through the brightness of each series of fish. So while I continue to randomly add color here and there until I'm satisfied, let me tell you a bit about my overall workflow in Procreate. As I said earlier, my workflow is still something I change around whenever I discover a neat trick in the program. But so far, the thing that is great about Procreate and that I do every time is duplicate. When you're in the Procreate app, you can see all of your artworks in a large grid. You can also stack canvases, basically in folders. For each artwork I make, I always duplicate the canvas within a stack for every big step of the process. For example, I sketched the fish, then duplicated it to move into inking. In this case, I even made a new canvas to resize, but I already talked about that. I also made a duplicate once I was done inking and before I started coloring. Then a few more during the coloring process. So now I have like 10 versions of this artwork. This allows me to make modifications and see what I'm gonna keep or not. If I don't like something I've added or changes I've made, I can revert back to that old version of the artwork. Because once you leave the app or leave your artwork, then all the changes are permanent. You can no longer double tap to undo when you open it back up. For this fish picture in particular, working with copies of my canvas was very useful due to the layers movement. You already know all of my fish are on a lot of different layers. However, due to the size of the canvas, which is basically 4K, and the resolution at 300 dpi, Procreate doesn't allow me to create more than 29 layers at the same time. This kinda sucks on Procreate's part, especially when my usual workflow in Photoshop leads me to create sometimes hundreds of layers for one artwork. So here I have to compromise. For example, once I color all the fish in a clipping mask, I have no choice but to flatten the mask into the layer below. Similarly, when I start shading, at first I shade with one clipping mask per layer, and then I have to combine it all because I've reached the maximum number of layers. This is really troublesome, but I admit I haven't run into this problem too many times in Procreate. I usually go for 72 dpi instead of 300, but since I have plans to print this artwork as a poster, I couldn't go too low. In turn, this really messes up my workflow. So whenever I find myself lacking layers, I duplicate the canvas as it is, then I merge the layers and work from there. It also allows me to get rid of the sketch, merging the inks, etc., which are things I hate to do usually. If things take a turn for the worse and I screw it up, at least I saved a version of it earlier. Anyway, back to the coloring at hand. For each layer, I went over every fish, first to color, then to shade using a purple tone and a low opacity overlay layer style. After that, I went back in there, between the flats and the shading, with more colors to paint the tails, the fins, and a cute little pattern on every fish. I didn't go too intricate with it. Simple lines will convey the fish patterns quite easily. I am now just about to show you the final artwork and ask you to subscribe, but before I do that, note that you can click the card at the top of the screen to see the full drawing process sped up even more. 6 hours condensed into 5.5 minutes, with one frame being one stroke, automatically generated by Procreate. So watch that and do consider subscribing, liking the video if you enjoyed it, and maybe leave a comment with things you want to see me draw in the future. I post all my artworks on Instagram at d3_sd, but I have a special Instagram page, d3_ink, for all my abstract ink doodles. Okay, now you're allowed to leave. I'm D3, have a good day. Bye!